you not make that statement?
Of course he didn't know. He didn't even know there would be a canon.
So
Did he?
Was Jesus, well, you can ask me that question during your period. Was Jesus divine?
Yes, Jesus was divine.
But he didn't know that there was going to be a canon of Scripture?
Well, there's certainly no evidence that he did, and he didn't know that there would be television either. That does not make him less divine. So it really doesn't.
Please. When you say that Jesus is divine, are you saying that he was sent by God, or do you hold the historic position of what I think most people would hold to as authentic Christianity, that he was the incarnation of the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity?
I believe he's the second person of the Trinity.
Okay. And he rose from the dead on the third day?
Yes.
Okay. And yet he didn't know that there was going to be a...
Well,
he didn't know future events?
All I can say is he did not discuss it.
Okay.
He did not discuss much of it. There's a serious question. What did he... I wonder what he meant when he said, "Do not cast your pearls before swine." He may not even have realized that there was time for Gentiles to hear the gospel message, because he was speaking to Jews.
Okay. Now, going to the specific issue of the debate this evening, is it your position that there is no possibility that arsenokoites, or arsenokoitai, used in the plural form, means a person who engages in sexual intercourse, one male with another male?
No, I don't think it's impossible that that is true. I think it is unlikely that that is true, because to the extent that you go back to its roots, it does mean male penetrator. It does not have an object, it only has a subject. It is a male who is penetrating. We don't know penetrating whom or what. I just think it's an impossible resolution, because the word does not exist outside of Paul's writings, contemporaneously outside of Paul's own writings.
And on what basis do you assert what you just said, that it means a male penetrating with no object?
Well, because the word, to the extent that the word means something, and the only way we know that is to take the roots. The best I can come up with is that it refers to male and to the act of penetration. It does not talk about the object.
Do you are you familiar with the Greek Septuagint translation of the Old Testament?
Yeah, but not as familiar as you are.
Okay. Are you familiar with the fact that in Leviticus chapters 18 and 20, the Greek Septuagint utilizes both arsenos and the koitao, the idea of lying with male? Both those words that are put together into arsenokoitai are used in the Greek Septuagint. Are you familiar with that?
I can't say I am, no.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, that those terms are there. Would it not? Would you agree with me that the Apostle Paul, each time he quoted the Old Testament, he quoted the Greek Septuagint translation? Are you familiar with that?
Well, no, I don't believe that we can know that for certain.
When Paul was citing an Old Testament passage to people who lived in Ephesus who would not know Hebrew, would it not be logical for us to assume that he would he would cite a translation that they would be familiar with?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. If, in point of fact, the Apostle Paul was intimately familiar with the Greek Septuagint, does it not seem to you to be extremely significant that the two words that he puts together are found specifically in the same context in the two prohibitions of plain homosexual activity in Leviticus 18 and Leviticus 20?
That assumes that the Greek translation of the Hebrew is accurate, and I do not believe that we know that. I know that you clearly believe it, and I know that 98% of the audience believes it, but I don't believe that all scholars believe it, and I certainly do not believe it.
Well, I'm confused. I wasn't asking about the accuracy of the translation. What I was asking about is, if Paul utilized the Greek Septuagint as if his citations in his letters can all be found in the Greek Septuagint, then does it not follow that since both of those words appear in the Greek Septuagint, that this would be the source from which Paul is deriving the word, and that therefore its meaning would be determined by Paul's understanding of Leviticus 18 and 20.
I think that there's a certain logic to that, and there's a certain fallacy to that, because you assume, and you continue to go back to this issue of what he understood the Hebrew to be. And my argument is that we don't know that that is the only way in which he could have constructed that word. You are making pole vaulting to conclusions that I think are not illogical. They are not completely without merit. I've never argued that. But I think that they are not the only interpretation to be given for the construction of that word and its use in the Christian New Testament.
Can you suggest another understanding of the, since you just said Hebrew, I'm not sure that you meant that. Are you referring to arsenokoitai?
No.
Okay, so could you suggest another meaning for the phrases in Hebrew used in Leviticus in 18 that say, if a male lies with a male, it is an abomination? Could you suggest another meaning other than one that indicates and implicates homosexuality?
No, but I think that the question of what it means, obviously, you know, in Israel it was terribly important to procreate. I think we'd agree with that. And again, we are talking about a culture here, a culture 2 millennia different from the one we're in here, where it did make a difference. Many of the cleanliness codes made a great deal of sense in Israel. They do not make sense necessarily in 21st century America. That is not to say they were wrong for their time, but it is to suggest that they are not the last word for our time. I've never said, in fact, I think I said 3 times at least, I am not suggesting that Paul was attracted to the idea of men laying with men, or that he did not think that it was unnatural. It's simply that it is in a different category in my understanding of the construction of his lists of things to which he objected, that there is a difference between that which is wicked and sinful and that which is purely unnatural. That is odd, not in the mainstream, wrong-headed.
Since we're about out of time, I'd like to pick up with Romans 1 and we get a chance in reverse.
Reverend Lind.
All right. What